Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And in a classic case of hyperbole, you have in the State of the Nation address, Ramaphosa referring to one Nelson Mandela and his legacy. Well, let me tell you about Mandela's legacy on the ground. And this is a report from a very respected newspaper in South Africa. And yes, the article is dated. It goes back to the 21st of October 2019. Why are we talking about this? Let me read exactly what it says, word for word. Former President Nelson Mandela's farms in the Eastern Cape are derelict, with little or no agricultural activity taking place. One of the farms has been badly vandalized, and the situation is no better at the other farm, where the herd of cattle has dwindled dramatically, and the gardens are overgrown and untended. Now, we're talking about the great Madiba's farm here. This is the man the ANC constantly referred to. This is how his legacy is being respected by the ANC. I spoke to Davy, a Bultfontein farmer, earlier this evening, and he says he knows that farm. He says that farm was sold to Mandela through BEE many, many years ago. At the time it was sold, the farm was generating this is back in the 1980s, generating 14 million rand a year in profit. Huge farm. It's now derelict. That's what's happened to Mandela's legacy. And it kind of points to what's happening in South Africa today. A hugely profitable farm now being driven into the ground, just like the rest of South Africa. Now that we understand the hyperbole behind the crap that the ANC talk when they give the State of the Nation address, let's get a summary of how others see it. The first impression of the State of the Nation address is a circus where red-clad laughing clowns joyfully playing and holding up the rest of the circus to get underway. Secondly, there was a distinct feel of a matric dance to the whole thing, with some very infantile, overdressed children with too much money to spend trying to impress each other. There was certainly no feeling at all of a solemn reflection of a deeply bankrupt country in crisis. I have to tell you, the one piece of clothing that really had me in stitches was this bright yellow hat that some lady wore on the ANC side of the government. It was probably the most disgusting piece of clothing I've ever seen in my life. But for some reason, she wore it. These people just don't care about all the different situations we face. That is why Ramaphosa was speaking on the Code Speak and narrative creation again. He again, like every year, went to fetch the story 30 years ago with Nelson Mandela's release. I get back to Nelson Mandela's farm. That's how they care for their own history. Anybody in the Transkei can actually drive out to Nelson Mandela's farm and go and witness this for yourself. And I would love some of my subscribers to do that and take some video footage and send it back to me so we have some hot off the press fresh video footage of the ruins of the farmhouse, the state of the farm itself. That would be absolutely magical. Is the State of the Nation address going to be a history speech every year? Are we not going to talk about the situation right now? Which, look at Nelson Mandela's farm, it kind of sums up what's happening in the rest of South Africa. Truth is, objectively spoken, the release of Nelson Mandela heralded in the African way an Afrocentric black fascist, actually, approach and the incompetent predator like looting the state. Mandela heralded in the country with no apparent values where people just throw rubbish next to a public rubbish bin. Mandela heralded in the tyranny of the majority where the majority's votes keep the criminals in power and create new criminal parties like the EFF. Mandela heralded in the total onslaught on the minorities of the country and their value system and history. And that is so incredibly important. There is a huge chasm between the moral compass of groups like the white minority and many, I'm not saying all, but many of the black majority. And especially those who are in power today. It's all gone to their head and they are just cleaning up. Mandela's release heralded in the total collapse of each and every state institution like Eskom that once could be compared to the best in the world, and it took them less than a generation to totally pillage it. And this is why they're supposed to be in government and looking after it. Well done, ANC. What a joke. Yes, it was Mandela that heralded all this in because the writers of the Constitution thought he was a god and wrote the Constitution in such a way as to give one man all power. Power which landed up with someone like Zuma and his Tsotsis. Tsotsis who are still there, by the way. Why don't we talk about this? Consider Cyril Ramaphosa. He was a deputy president under Jacob Zuma. He was complicit in all the corruption and the state capture that happened under Zuma's presidency. And yet he is the president of South Africa today. What a joke. On the 13th of February 2020, after the matric ball and the circus combined into one, reality will settle back in. The reality of bankrupt and imploding state departments, institutions and municipalities. There is a report in the last week that only 18 municipalities in the country are not yet totally dysfunctional. That's how bad it's become. Only 18 out of something like 260 municipalities in South Africa. This is the fruits of black economic empowerment and the ANC government and their money-grabbing cadres who are just cleaning up. And no one has yet been convicted of corruption. That's why I call South Africa the gangster state. It's self-evident. Today the reality starts again of people being robbed, raped and killed by criminals. And when we talk about people, we're talking about tourists as well. Tourists to South Africa have a huge target on their back in a country where the police service have completely lost the plot. They're not even attending crime scenes anymore. If you come to South Africa, as I always say, it's like extreme sports. If you want to bring your young kids and your wife into an environment where they're going to be subjected to the sort of shit that you could expect in Syria or Libya, do it. But then you're an idiot, because when you're a victim, then you might just wake up. Today the reality starts again of people being robbed, raped and killed by criminals. The reality of water and power shredding. The reality of failing sewage systems, which causes a massive stink where people have to live, and sewage to streams and to rivers. The reality of crappy services at hospitals and some very unfriendly, uncaring black nurses sitting around when patients need care. Now, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when coronavirus manifests itself in South Africa. And when it does, it's going to make the Black Plague look like a kitchen party because of the township system. And because so many blacks in South Africa have AIDS, which means their immune systems are down, which is the perfect remedy for a deadly coronavirus known as novel coronavirus. I think this is going to be the big story for 2020 in South Africa. I really do. But of course, it didn't rate a mention in the State of the Nation address by Cyril Ramaphosa, did it? Ramaphosa and liberal friends in the media drop the narrative and talk about how South Africa has turned into a filthy trash heap with no apparent value system. Absolutely, completely no moral compass. Everybody's on the take. The bigger you are, the more you make. That's how it works. And of course the minority groups, and I'm not just including the whites, are being marginalized while the looting and raping and pillaging goes on without any impediment in South Africa under the ANC government. Talk about how the ANC brought in state capture as a policy tool and how the country has been looted bare in front of our eyes. Talk about how we are already in a failed state. And I would add to that, talk about how now state capture is going to involve the pension funds that still have some cash in them, because they're going to be cleaned out by these looters. And I'm talking about the ANC government and their cadres. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates. Please like this video. Please share this video. And above all, please stay safe.